So, I'm Mark Seifter, and this is Arcane Mark. Tonight, I have Linda Zayas-Palmer here for an interview. We're going to talk to Linda about various cool Arcane Mark related topics. I'll ask her some questions, and we'll see what questions you guys ask in the chat. Welcome, Linda.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. So, to get started, in Arcane Mark for now, I'm mostly going to be focusing on people who are working at Paizo. Mm-hmm. So, Linda, what do you do at Paizo?
So, I'm a developer at Paizo, and if you've seen Mark's previous video about what different people do at Paizo, he described that the role of the developer is really... Well, first of all, no two developers really do exactly the same thing, and the developer's role has a lot of different aspects to it. So I'm a developer for Pathfinder Society and for the Pathfinder Adventure Card Society. So what that generally means is that I'm going to be looking at the process of making adventures from beginning to end, first of all. So that starts with coming up with the concept for the season. What's the overarching plot going to be like? Then we're looking at creating outlines for each individual adventure. So we're going to come up with those adventure seeds. We're going to write up an outline, and we're going to pick an author for it. We'll assign that to an author. Then we'll work with the author throughout the process, from working on what we call an expanded outline, where they sort of flesh out some more of the ideas and we talk to them. A milestone phase, which is kind of a halfway there product where we can get more into some of the details, and then they finally turn over the product. Once it comes in, we're looking to develop it and get it polished up and ready to go over to the editors. So that development process includes everything from making sure that the adventure's encounters are balanced fairly, that it has enough treasure, that the treasure's in the right places, that the rules are correct, that the adventure is able to account for if, the creative solutions, shall we say. Pathfinder Society really does try to support different ways that players may approach things. And part of that is providing some guidance for the GMs of side directions we think people are likely to take. So that's sort of the development phase. That's with the RPG in particular, Pathfinder Society. With the Pathfinder Adventure Card Society, there's a little bit less of that aspect of the balance to it, because it's more focusing on the story of it. But there's that whole process from the beginning to the end. It also has working on the art. So, for example, we'll get in sketch maps from the freelancers, the authors who are working on the products. We will send those over to the art team. We'll come up with descriptions for which NPCs are going to get illustrated. There's also a lot, particularly now with with second edition coming up, which is super exciting. There's a lot of policy discussions that we have. So, how are we going to handle a variety of things? I see right now there is a question about society factions. So that's an example of one of the many policy discussions that we've been having. How do we handle the factions?
So
how do we handle everything
Dragon
else?
Spirit 86 has a question. For some people won't be able to see the chat on YouTube.
Yeah.
It says, saw the blog post about society factions. Did the first season of scenario ideas lead to the 6 new factions? Or did the ideas for factions lead to season 1 story arcs? So this is a really good question. It's not asking for new information that hasn't been revealed, so I think you can talk a little bit about the philosophy.
I think I can, yeah. Well, I think that in some ways when we were looking at this whole how are we going to do second edition, how are we going to do season 1, we're really looking at, and I can't say exactly what season 1 is now, of course, but we're really looking at what we wanted to sort of go back to what are the key foundational aspects of what does it mean to be a Pathfinder, what does it mean to be adventuring as a Pathfinder. So that comes into play with the factions. What we did is we put up on the board a list of, so what are all the reasons that someone might join the Pathfinder Society? What's driving them? Why are they doing this? And then we kind of organize them into categories and pick some of the most important ones. So for the blog that you see there, the Horizon Hunters is really about okay, I want to explore and I want to look cool doing it. So those are the sort of the ideas that went into it.
And when you were doing that process, if I remember correctly from that meeting, after collecting the categories, there was actually a survey.
Yes,
where
that's right.
all of the fans who were interested in factions and reasons that Pathfinders were Pathfinders ranked in order their preferences based on those things that went up on the board. And sure enough, the ones that came towards the top were all sorts of things like you see in the one that was revealed. Which one was that again?
We revealed the Horizon Hunters,
right.
And we also revealed Radiant Oath.
So they revealed the major faction Horizon Hunters. You can find it on Paizo.com's most recent blog, which is all about exploring places. It's got fan favorite Venture Captain Calistro Benray.
Oh, it's so fun to be able to make her a leader because she's really been popular.
And then the minor faction Radiant Oath, all about being good but also helping people in a very personal way, which has, if Calistro Benray is a fan favorite, fan darling Valace.
Yes.
As the faction leader. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so it looks like we sort of interrupted your train there a little bit to talk about Dragoon Spirit's question, but do you have anything else that you were going to talk about in terms of the process? You were talking about the development process, but then also some of the other tasks that are involved with policy.
Yeah, so there's policy setting. There's also all those little peripherals like writing boons and reviewing every rule that ever comes out for Pathfinder for the purposes of additional resources and doing sanctioning documents and things like that. And of course, we're always keeping a close eye on the message boards and other channels for people for different questions and issues that might crop up. And then every day pretty much we're discussing, oh, well, this thing came up, someone was saying this online, what do we think about this? Is this something that we need to address or that kind of thing?
Alright, cool. So that's really a lot of things that you do in your job for the Pathfinder Society. Is there anything different about the Adventure Card Society, or is it more of a similar thing, getting milestones, doing development, making policy decisions?
Yeah, so the Pathfinder Adventure Card Society, and I was sort of saying in the middle of what I was saying before, I realized, yeah, that's kind of the role-playing aspect, because they really are fairly different. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
With the Pathfinder Adventure Card Society, instead of
David.
our own... Hi, David. Instead of us hiring authors to do the writing, which includes the rules, we actually have the folks at Loan Shark, who are the same people who made the adventure card game, doing the rules and the mechanics for it. So in that, I'm working closely with them to coordinate, okay, so here's the plot, making sure that everyone's all on the same page, making sure that the folks at Loan Shark have all the information they need about the lore and the world in order to pull things together, reviewing stuff and making sure that everything looks well together, and just making sure that things stay on schedule as well.
What's the most recent adventure that came out for the Adventure Card Society?
The most recent one? So you're not talking about the ones about to come out at PaizoCon, are you?
I don't know. I don't know which one. I actually don't know what the most recent one is.
Well, I mean, technically the most recent thing that, so now I'm trying to remember whether 5-6 came out. The one
I don't
that you
know.
wrote.
That's why I was asking you.
Yeah, I know. I need to double check on that. My apologies. I don't remember quite off the top of my head. This is one of the things that happens when you're working on adventures. Like your mindset is a little farther back than what the actual release schedule is.
Well, if you guys remember my episode about what happens, you might have seen that there were a lot of steps at the end that looked like they didn't involve editorial and that involved the website. So
exactly, it's in that stage right now. So it's in that stage right now. But
so if it is out, you should definitely check out part 6 of Season of Tapestry's Tide.
Yeah, and I would say that, particularly if you were here for Mark's episode on Jade Regent and you liked what he was talking about there, that there are some thematic similarities that might interest you.
Maybe some Onis in there.
Yeah, maybe a few, maybe a lot, maybe a chance to get into a flying airship. I mean,
what about a dream ship?
The dream ship's pretty awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's going to be a lot of fun. But what I've been focused on right now, with the sort of the one I'm more in the middle of, is what's coming out at PaizoCon. And as we've announced, we have a new adventure called the Fang with Thieves that's coming out, which is a four scenario adventure for level 1 characters, using that. It's going to be a first chance to kick the tires on that new core set, which is for the adventure card game, which is pretty awesome. I've had the chance to try that out myself as well.
So that's the core set, not a corset.
Yes, the core set, space in the middle, for the adventure card game.
So Fangwood Thieves, I guess that's set in the Fangwood over in the sort of near Malthus type area?
No, we just called it that to confuse you.
Okay.
It's set in the Fangwood.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Mm-hmm. And it involves kobolds getting into various hijinks and the PCs needing to, or characters, I suppose. It's hard to break certain habits, but the characters having to deal with that.
All that makes sense. Is there anything else coming out at PaizoCon that's really interesting from the RPG side?
Oh, what a loaded softball you've just thrown me. All right, so
I mean, this is a hard-hitting interview. Okay, I'm going to ask you the hard questions.
Yeah.
What about the national debt?
Nope.
Okay.
We are not getting into that in this interview. No politics.
Okay.
No politics. He seriously joked about this when we were talking earlier. Oh, what are the things that I could ask you? Well, I could ask you an easy thing like that, national debt. And it's like, nope. Anyway, so on to what I actually am going to talk about. We've got the special Siege of Gallowspire coming out. It is a tier 5 to 16 interactive special with a hard mode.
I heard that it has a champion and a soldier mode. What's the difference between champion and soldier?
So the soldier mode is sort of the easier of the two difficulty modes. The soldier mode is, I would say, it's a smidge harder than a typical special, but this special offers also a little more support than you might see in a typical special. So soldier mode isn't going to be that much harder than what you would normally see. The champion mode, on the other hand, is the answer to players who are looking for more challenging foes to confront in this sort of conclusion scenario.
Okay.
So
what you're saying is there's no shame in going soldier because it's still a really satisfying conclusion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But the champion is just for, it's like, no, I must have the biggest, giantest finale there ever was.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the thought behind it. It's just like it's a hard mode in other scenarios. Like you can still really be a part of the story, contributing to the story, and doing all that sort of stuff. It's just that, you're not going to be facing things that are quite as hard.
So I usually play the special at PaizoCon. It's one of the few times that I usually get to play Pathfinder Society at all. How would I go about making sure that I find a good table to play in the mode that I want to play and the level that I want to play for Siege of Gallowspire?
So, are you talking about for PaizoCon?
For PaizoCon. That's about the only time that I get to play.
Yeah, so the PaizoCon is, it's Gallowspire. Well, Gloomspire is another, David said originally I thought this was Gloomspire. Gloomspire is another perilous area with its own adventure recently.
Gallowspire is even worse than Gloomspire.
Yeah, you have on Seven Fingers Sails, a recent adventure that finishes off that Gloomspire storyline. But we're looking at the Gallowspire now, or at least what's left of it.
I seem to remember when Jason heard about the fact that the Pathfinder Society was going to the place and doing what it was doing in Gallowspire, he was like, good luck.
Yeah, well, we kind of wanted to make sure that we had something big. You were asking though about PaizoCon.
Yes.
So the events are up on Paizo.com for that, and you want to make sure that you get the sort of the tier and the difficulty that you're looking for that.
Okay, but they're no more open right now. Would that mean I go there on the day of and they'll see me at a table?
So a lot of the registration this year for PaizoCon, because of last year we had a lot of feedback that there were a bunch of people who came in and there were walk-ins and there weren't any seats left, and some of them, like, they traveled from really far away and they didn't really get to play. So in answer to that concern, our PaizoCon tables generally we're set up for 4 with 2 walk-in slots, so that way people who are coming in the day of or whatever else, like, they're all also going to get a shot at playing.
Okay, that makes sense. And if that doesn't work out, are they going to adjust for later on, or is this sort of the way going forward at all other conventions?
I mean, I think this is one of those things where we're very much listening to the feedback of people. And we had, okay, this didn't work before, and then we'll see how this works this time, how people like it, things like that. Because I mean, like with a lot of things in organized play, we're always sometimes we look to experiment a bit to try to find things that work better for everyone.
Oh, well, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And we'll see if I do get to play Gallowspire. I have 3 games this year, so I may actually just be too exhausted to do it, but it could be a lot of fun.
I'm gonna be the overseer GM for that, so I'll be participating no matter what.
All right.
I also did want to talk about so folks, is anyone here going to PaizoCon?
They'll tell us on their own time.
Yeah.
We're actually a little bit ahead of the chat, and we always will be. So
okay.
There we go. See, the me from Alex. You probably typed that immediately, but it takes a little while for it to get there.
Fair enough. But yeah, if you're going to be playing Siege of Gallowspire anywhere, whether you are at PaizoCon or anywhere else, one thing to keep in mind for this is that there's a special mechanic. There are aid characters in this adventure, and what that means is that you can bring others of your PCs, other than the one that you're actually playing, to help out. So to bring an aid character can be any PC you have of level 5+, so it can be a 20th level PC if you want. And the aid character, you don't need to bring all of that character's stuff to have them as an aid character. All you need is their most recent Chronicle sheet. And that gives you a place, first of all, to have the character's record with you, and also to record if something happens to that character, because you will have opportunities during the adventure to take greater risks with your aid character in order to have the chance of reaping greater rewards.
So if like 200 people are playing, it's really like 1,200 Pathfinders
yes,
are
exactly.
doing stuff right now.
And
I want to take a moment to call out Fragile Vessel is saying that they won't be able to come to PaizoCon, but they'll be GMing at Gen Con. Thank you for GMing at Gen Con, Fragile Vessel. We have so many tables in the Sagamore Ballroom that it's always hard to get enough GMs to fill them all and to keep up with the demand of all the players who want to play the new game. So thank you so much for GMing at Gen Con. Anyone else who thinks I want to GM at Gen Con, I'm sure that even though it's late now, that could still be worked out.
Yeah, and Fragile Vessel, if you're not already on the Slack channels for 1098 GMs, we have that going on so that people can ask questions and have discussions in a way that isn't necessarily revealing all the information to the public early, but so that the GMs can be prepared.
So it looks like David has a question. Is it best in Siege of Gallowspire to be as high as possible?
Okay, so there are funny ways I can interpret that question, but I'm going to interpret it.
Well, in the state of Washington, we could interpret it any of the ways.
Not at the hotel where PaizoCon is.
If it means to be the maximum possible level and play it on champion mode, I don't know that much about this adventure, but the one thing I do know is that if you play it at the maximum level and you play it on champion mode, that there's a champion plus.
Yes.
And it's only for the maximum level on champion mode and optional, and that everyone wants to do that. So yes.
Oh my God. Okay. So I see 2 possible questions for this. So like Mark said, for 8. Okay. So for 8 characters, the higher level the 8 character, the more likely they are to be successful, and they may even be super successful. The lower level the 8 character, the more likely that they might come to harm doing something risky. And that applies too for if you don't have enough 8 characters to fill all your slots. You can bring in a 4th level character as well. This is kind of like a pre-generated character, though you don't need their slots and things like that.
Many dead Kyras.
I anticipate there being a fair number of dead Kyras, because the thing with the 8 character is if you're bringing a 4th level 8 character in and you're telling them, hey, do this super risky thing, like, there isn't actually any risk to your characters at all. So, like, their chance of succeeding is a lot less than that it would be for a PC, because a PC is actually possibly going to get hurt. So we wanted to make sure that it was still always better to bring your own character.
Plus, a higher level character has more options to recover from bad stuff that happens to them when you send them off. So a lower level character might be less likely to be able to do that because they don't have as much money on them.
Exactly, yeah.
So
higher level waves are better.
Statler has a different question. Do we know when the Pathfinder Society Guide will be up for 2nd edition? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, we don't have an exact date for when that's announced. That's something that we've certainly started the process of working on and starting to get that written and things like that, but I don't have anything else to announce for that there. I would just say keep an eye out for the blogs. I'm sure we'll be announcing it there when we know more.
Just like every other time there are plans to make it easier to deal with and easier to use, better for everyone. I've seen some of those early preliminary plans, and they're looking good, but we don't have any more that we can really reveal at this time.
Yeah, well, we do have, there's one of the venture officer task forces that we have is a review team for the guide, and they've been really helpful in taking a look at what we have, and I believe Tanya's reached out to others within the community as well to ask, okay, so what's going to be best for the organization here? What should come first? What do we not necessarily need to have? What can go later, and things like that? Because we do want to make sure that one of our primary goals with the design of the guide for Pathfinder Society in the second edition is that it's more approachable to the new player than the current guide. Because there's always the risk that when you have a guide, it's a living document, it's going for a long time, people ask a lot of questions, and we want to answer those questions, but it's not always the case that the guide is the best place to get into the minutia of this, that, and the other thing. So, how do these 7 things interact?
1 second. Dragoon Spirit has a question that many of our YouTube viewers may also have. Dragoon Spirit's not sure what this guide is that Statler was talking about and wonders, is this the hardcover book or a character primer PDF walking you through character creation? So, Dragoon Spirit, the guide is a colloquial shortening of the guide to Pathfinder,
the
Pathfinder Society Role-Playing Guild Guide, which hopefully will have its title shortened as well now that Adventure Card Society is this thing, but who knows. It is an online document that is everything you need to know about playing in organized play. So right now it exists. It's gone through many iterations. It has everything from what is an organized play to rules about creating your character for organized play, the factions, and so on. So it's a separate document. It's not considered to be like one of the released products, even though the secret is it's pretty lengthy and a significant task that is always released every Gen Con. And if you were watching that episode where I showed you the production schedule, it sure does need a lot of that editing and layout and other things in each year. So it's very good that you're starting to think of it as being a major product that is not a hardcover or softcover physical book. All right.
David says, Lisa says hi. Hi, Lisa.
And Statler says, Statler's read this week's blogs. Seems like you want to make the additional resources section less cumbersome. That sounds like a great idea as more books are released for 2E.
Yeah, we definitely do want... We recognize that the additional resources document is a forever long index. And it's one of those it's one of the things that we're looking at with an eye toward, okay, if I am coming up to it... we both of us certainly... I'm a 5-star GM, he's a 5-star GM. We've certainly had the experience of introducing new players to the game and saying, hey, here are the things you need to know. And when you're pointing a new player toward this giant document, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's as welcoming as it could be. So that's definitely something we have an eye toward for the new edition.
Well, that sounds really good to me, just because keeping up with additional resources and inventory tracking sheets and some of all those other extra steps, and maybe I'm just too chaotic, but it just seemed to me like I really love organized play, but that was like a barrier that I had to push myself through.
But yeah, we're really analyzing everything. And if you saw the new blog, you also may have seen the new Chronicle sheets that they have that they have place for you to track your items on there again. We had moved away from that and toward the inventory tracking sheet, and now we're going back to the Chronicle sheets themselves. And of course, people, if you like inventory tracking sheets, you can still maintain your own means of putting a list of your gear. But we're really we really heard that feedback, and we're saying, okay, we're gonna go back here. This was one of the many experiments we did because we thought it might make things better, and it wasn't particularly popular. So
I will always be a computer scientist at heart, and adding extra data structures and pointers to somewhere else always makes me sad. When you can just do it on the main thing and just send people through a queue. Fragile Vessel says, Google spreadsheets to the rescue. Alright, so...
John Compton loves spreadsheets so much. Like, the number of times when he's working on something and he's like, well, if he's got something on his mind, you can bet that he's gonna pick it up, he's gonna make a spreadsheet, and then he's gonna show it, and he's like, oh yeah, I have this. Like, he just made a spreadsheet for like building 2nd edition characters and stuff like that.
I believe that John sometimes makes spreadsheets to calm down and to center himself. Just
no, he totally does.
I need to do something zen. I'm going to make a spreadsheet. So,
we have all these planning spreadsheets too. It's like, what are we doing for the entire season? That's a spreadsheet. All that kind of stuff.
Looks like Fragile Vessel has done that too. All right, so earlier, JamWno just logged in and asked if anyone has asked about the Adventure Card Society yet, and I said that they had, and I haven't gotten a follow-up yet, but is there anything else about the society other than you talked about what you do in the typical tasks? You talked about the Fangwood.
Yeah.
Is there Fangwood Thieves? Is there anything else about the society in particular that I guess we can wait and see if JamWno has a specific question.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, though, this is also going to be something that we're going to be talking more about at PaizoCon. What are our plans for moving forward? We have a panel on Sunday of PaizoCon as well, where we're going to talk more about that. And I believe that one may be. I'm not sure if that one's recorded. I know No Direction's doing a lot of recordings while we're there. I'm not sure if they're specifically going to be in that panel, but even if they're not, I'll be sure to post that information online soon.
I mean, that'll be
the name of this, but things like the name of the new year and what its symbol is and stuff like that. We've got that, and we're ready to start talking about it once
that's gonna be a star-studded panel, right? I mean, it's breaking the normal panel size limits, and it's gonna have you and like
it's me
Mike
and
Selinker,
Vic and Chad and
Keith.
And
it's gonna have
Tanya
a lot of It's gonna have a ton of great people.
Well, Tanya was saying that she may like sit in the front row and cheer for us because she's like, there's just too many people.
5 already breaks the limit. Dragoon Spirit says, another random thought. I didn't realize the adventure card game was done out of house. How much of your work process for organized play runs into IP issues, copyright problems, or the like? Do you ever feel those kinds of concerns limit your design space when you're coming up with the adventures?
That's really interesting. You know, I'd say it doesn't necessarily limit the design space, but it does mean that you phrase things in a different way. Like, for example, in some of the adventures in Season of Tapestries Tides, there's references to fishfolk. And fishfolk are Lokatha, but we can't say Lokatha in the product because that's not, because
I
it's
believe
not
that is not because it's done out of house. That's because of the fact that it's not a role-playing game.
Yes.
And the OGL, which is the license that allows all of these monsters to become available, is only for role-playing games. It's the same thing that you would run into for like any non-role-playing game adaptation.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's not because it's done out of house. It's because it is working with the card game, and the card game is not under the same license, so it can't use some of those terms. So we have to watch for that.
Right. So Statler is asking about the Open. He says, does the card game have a competitive aspect to it at conventions? I seem to remember a winner at Gen Con last year.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, obviously no one wants you to spoil the secrets of the Open because being a secret is the point of the Open.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about the format of the Open and the idea of the Open in a non-competitive game, this competitive version?
So generally with the Open, players will have certain decks that they use, certain restrictions under which they have their characters to make sure that things are more balanced. You have teams that are competing against each other. So they're trying to generally defeat more things and close locations more quickly with fewer blessings used and things like that. So they're trying to succeed more at the same adventures. And you'll have generally an overarching storyline that has with it a set of challenging adventures, and then you'll have folks who are scoring those. And then they'll use that to determine, sort of in a more typical tournament style, who advances to the next round and so forth.
So it's still cooperative. You're just competing against other cooperative groups to see how well you can do at it. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like a solo play of a board game where you try to rack up a certain score, but in this case, against other groups. So, Dragoon Spirit asked whether the Kingmaker computer RPG can be under the OGL. I actually don't know for sure, but if it had OGL monsters, then it probably is, and if it was conspicuously missing them, then it probably isn't. Not that that is the best answer, but I have just been so busy with Pathfinder 2nd Edition that I've not been able to play enough of the Kingmaker computer RPG to tell you for sure that I remember monsters that couldn't have been in there unless it was
yes,
the OGL.
it's part of the old infamous video gamers pile of hundreds of games that look awesome that I don't have time to play.
I know, right? But yeah, figuring out what's in the OGL is always an ongoing process. Statler says, I actually wish Pathfinder Society had a competitive aspect such as Living Greyhawk used to have many years ago. So there was an experiment one year in Race for the Rune of Carved Key where there was a competitive aspect in that certain tables advanced to Race for the Rune Carved Key Part 2. And there were some serious problems with that I guess probably existed in all of them, which was, for instance, just how you're scoring. In that case, doing more was scored higher. So basically, if you had a GM who fast-forwarded you through all the role-playing and just said, oh, just roll diplomacy, you got a much higher score and were more likely to advance than a GM who wanted to give you a better experience by role-playing. And just a lot of people were not very happy at the time. We were not at the company. In fact, we played.
Yeah.
And were some of the people who weren't too thrilled because the author of that adventure specifically called me out on the forums and like, make sure your character gets to Part 2. Which I later found out was because I'm from a place that you have to know the name of it or die in Part 2. And it totally made sense. It was all about my character. And we did not.
Yeah. Well, there was also that Grand Convocation that was what was it, Grand Melee 2012.
There was a Grand Melee
at PaizoCon.
That one also had an interesting scoring thing because our table, and we had regional venture coordinator Alka Taniga, who's not the regional coordinator at the time, was at our table, and we dominated. We finished before anyone else. Some groups didn't even beat all of the encounters. We beat them all. Looking at our score, our GM said there's no way you didn't win, but they still couldn't call it because one low-level table was just still going, and they were going, and they went past the time, and they eventually resolved it to the end of what they were supposed to resolve, and they had figured out that there's this one spot, and they said if you stand on it, you can earn points to hold the spot, and we stood on it on every round of our fight, which we had won. But it turned out that standing on it for 45 rounds of losing the fight was worth more points than finishing the fight quickly was worth and winning. So that actually that team that had like sort of wandered around for 45 rounds while having one person stand on that spot won the Grand Melee. So the problem is when you're scoring a competitive game, it's very easy because you went against them and somebody won. But when you're scoring a cooperative game, you have to create a rubric for scoring it, and there can be a lot of issues in any of those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think even when it comes to special events, like there's already quite a few challenges when it comes to balancing the interactives from a cooperative perspective, deciding where to set all the thresholds, how to set up the coordination and the cooperation. That things like that like have at least for me they've kind of put me off the idea of this competitive aspect because I don't really see a way around it that doesn't encourage people to kind of game the system or potentially make an experience that's not as satisfying for the players as the cooperative versions.
So Dragoon Spirit had another really good question for you, Linda. How much sort of effort or mind space goes into generating the new content, figuring out what the new season will be, and going forward with the story compared to the sanctioning of both side projects and older content that had not been sanctioned yet?
So, I mean, sort of the first law of working in the organized play program is that scenarios are king. Getting the scenarios out to the GMs on time is always going to be the first priority. After that, we're looking at a lot of the other things that we have. Some of it has to do with, you know, the ebbs and flows of other things in the projects. Like, oh, do we have to outline a bunch of things now to make sure things go out in time? Oh, is there like this issue that's come up for this convention that we need to try to resolve? But I mean, when we have the time, we always like to try to work on the sanctioning thing, and sometimes also it's kind of a nice break from the other things that you're doing because it's sort of a way to switch gears and do another project. But it's one of those things that's always up there. It's never forgotten, but it also needs to be able to rise above those tasks that absolutely are the blinking red lights, you must finish this by this date or else type
So
stuff.
correct me if I'm wrong, but as I heard of it, for scenarios, the problem is if you decided not to prioritize them and they slip by even a few days, then some organizers decide they're going to organize the game for like the next day after it comes out, which doesn't really give them a lot of prep time no matter what, but in this case actually makes their event fail. And that's the reason why it's actually a dependency issue, and it's people relying on you to get it out. Is that right?
Yes, and I mean generally, if you're organizing an event and you can make sure that you're not scheduling something for like within the week of when it first comes out, or in the case of the bigger conventions, we're sure to give things to people, the GMs, in advance so that they have them for like PaizoCon and Gen Con and things like that. But generally we feel that it's good for you to give the GMs that buffer, but we also want to make sure that it's there for people when we say it's there, that people can rely on us to get our products out on time.
So Fragile Vessel's really excited for Kingmaker 2nd Edition to be sanctioned. And JamW No offers a really intriguing question, which is, once the Kingmaker 2nd Edition book comes out, assuming it's sanctioned for 2nd Edition, could you play it in campaign mode, claim that you are playing it in a role-playing game, which means that you are actually sanctioned for 1st Edition, and give yourself both Chronicles because you have technically... Or even playing it in non-campaign mode in 2nd Edition is playing it in campaign mode for 1st Edition because it says play it in any role-playing game.
That would be playing it in a role-playing game and using the... I would need to talk to the team for that, but I would think so. I just want to make sure I'm not putting myself into like a trap where someone's saying, oh yeah, well, now I can get credit for both campaigns simultaneously and double sanctioning sheets and things like that.
Well, I think they can already, play, get credit by playing Changeling, the World of Darkness.
Yeah, no, totally.
Fae game, and running Kingmaker
I just want to think about how that would work in terms of like, could you simultaneously get Chronicles for both at the same time and things like that. Those like kind of corner cases.
So it looks like Fragile Vessel's heading out, and so bye, and see you in August. All right, we can go back to some of these other questions. Yeah, that was a stumper. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So Statler is asking a question. Statler imagines the first year of Pathfinder 2nd Edition will have low-level scenarios as characters gain their first XP.
Yes.
I believe it hasn't been revealed yet, but I will say, logistically, it is impossible it would be silly to say, oh, well, one of our 3 launch projects is an 8 to 11.
Yeah, no, I mean...
because then nobody could buy it from us.
I guess if you saw what we did with the launch of Starfinder Society, how you start with the lower level scenarios, you start to look at where are people going to be leveling up. We're going to be doing the same thing here.
All right. So that sounds pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you guys have actually had amazing questions for this interview. This has been some of the best interactions. I haven't even gotten to all of mine. Let's see. Dragoon Spirit asks, is the level cap still more or less intact despite high-level play being a 2E focus?
We've not revealed anything about a particular level cap. I think this is one of those things that's going to come into play as the adventures get higher and higher level as we move things forward. I mean, it is worth considering, too, that, like, say, in the 1st edition Pathfinder Society campaign, there was that cap of, like, oh, you're level 11, and then initially it was you're level 11, and then you're a Seeker. And then we started releasing these scenarios that were higher level as we move forth. So, I would expect that eventually we're going to see some high level content, but it's going to be a while before we have characters at the level where not only do we have anybody who can play it, but we can't just make scenarios that are really high level when we have the first people who are possibly at that level. We need to make sure that we've built up enough of a bank of people who can play it that's worth spending one of our slots on compared to lower level content that's more accessible overall.
And certainly, since it's already been revealed in the product descriptions that Age of Ashes is going to go all the way up there, if you sanctioned Age of Ashes, that would provide very high level play opportunities right from the start.
Yeah, that's right.
Not sure if there would be enough XP to actually follow along Age of Ashes up to that point, but...
So Dragon Spirit asks, would you expect a similar Seeker mechanic or something new? I would not expect the thing that you have with Eyes of the Ten right now, where you have to be at exactly the same point of XP. I wouldn't expect that kind of thing to happen again, no.
All right. Yeah, and I mean, I guess it didn't happen in any of the other secret adventures.
Yeah, I mean, that was
hasn't really happened in
Starfinder
Society either, right?
No, it hasn't.
So, in general, I would say that it seems to me, based on some of the answers you've been giving, that Starfinder Society gave a good opportunity to test some new ideas, and that some of them were really popular and some of them were less so, and that would it be fair to say that Pathfinder Society 2nd Edition has taken the lessons from Starfinder Society and is applying some of the most popular ideas?
Yes, definitely. I mean, with Starfinder Society, that was sort of our first chance to take a look at what we can learn from all the feedback we've received over the years, and so you will definitely see a fair number of things that we've pulled from this experience of Starfinder Society and the feedback it's received to make the 2nd Edition campaign a stronger one.
So it looks like a lot of people, including Dave Nielsen, are very happy that Hell Knights are going to be the very beginning of the Age of Ashes adventure path, and that is definitely true. And as you might expect, the ability for yourself to play Hell Knights will not take long to arrive. So it could be a Hell Knight with the Hell Knights. The Unfortunate Pumpkin asks, will 1E scenarios be playable in 2E?
So if you're asking from the perspective of, are we planning to convert 1E scenarios over to 2nd Edition, or can I just pick up a 1st Edition scenario and convert it to 2nd Edition myself? Not for credit within the campaign. Of course, if you want to convert just for fun, converting from 1st Edition to 2nd Edition is you have more experience with that in particular.
Last year at PaizoCon, it was for the playtest, but still, I converted 2 different adventures. I converted, Bid for Alabastrine by Thurston Hellman and Reaping What We Sow by Linda Zayas-Palmer.
Yeah.
And it was dirt easy. The influence mechanic just converted right away. The combats were very easy to convert, so everybody had a lot of fun. Converting 2nd Edition to 1st Edition is a pain, and it's not because the compatibility is different, it's just because making anything for 1st Edition takes 10 times longer than if you're a GM and you're trying to make your own stuff for 2nd Edition. We made it easier for you to build custom content. So that's what makes converting one way easier.
So officially, no. What we're looking at is focusing on making new content rather than bringing along that content that you've already seen and packaging it in a different way. It's related to the question that who is it that asked the question before about priorities and sanctioning and things like that?
Oh yeah, that was I think Dragoon Spirit.
Yeah, it's related to the question that Dragoon Spirit asked. That we only have so much time, and so we want to focus primarily on bringing out new content for people to engage with.
And honestly, if this was an adventure path, because they have their own separate boards for this, I wouldn't be surprised if, for some of the adventure paths, fan conversions to 2E appear very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
For Pathfinder Society, I'm not as sure, because not sure if there's a space that's dedicated where people put out homebrewed stuff in Pathfinder Society, since you normally can't use it.
Yeah.
But if there was a venue for it, I'm sure people would start converting, because there's some really great stories in Pathfinder Society scenarios, and people are going to want to tell it even if they don't do it for official credit, I think. So that was a good question, Unfortunate Pumpkin. Alright, so it looks like, we made it pretty well with a lot of fan questions, but I was going to ask you, wait, Dragon Spirit says, I don't know, having NPCs not follow the same rules as PCs was a big concern for me. Heard NPC classes were gone now. Okay, so I'll field that one, since it's about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, NPCs follow the rules of the PCs as much as you want them to. By which I mean, unlike Starfinder, where because Starfinder didn't have 4 degrees, there was a long chain of things, but since Starfinder didn't have 4 degrees of success, that meant it still had auto-dominate and you kill the party situations, which means that combined with compatibility to Pathfinder monsters meant that it needed to have this situation where NPCs and monsters had the higher accuracy and lower AC that you know them for. They're still a balanced opposition, but their numbers don't line up. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, neither of those two things is true. The numbers do line up, roughly, Something built as a monster probably has a little bit higher numbers and not as cool special abilities as the PCs. So what that means, though, is it balances out to the point where you could just build an NPC as a PC. That'll work fine. You can build them using our NPC generation system. That'll be easier. It'll be very similar to building them as a PC, but it'll take 1/10 to maybe 5 to 10% of the time. And you can basically do it as much or as little as you want. And that's sort of my answer there for Dragon Spirit about that. And it is true there is no such thing as NPC classes. If you want to have a baker, you can make a baker using the NPC rules and give them some fun baking ability, but they wouldn't be like the expert class. Statler asks, any idea when we find out when the playtest point rewards will be announced? Should that be in the next big announcement of rules?
Yeah, so we have a schedule. We have a schedule for all the things that we have to announce between now and Gen Con. I don't remember exactly which one of our blogs that's in, but so I will say soon. But it's on the agenda.
But since there was just one of these rules announcements, there's probably some gap before the next one, right?
Yeah.
I imagine.
All right. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting with those because those blogs are really long and they take a lot to write, but then we realize just how much content there is to communicate to people. So it's like, well, there's not really a way around writing a 2,000-word blog now, is there?
Looks like Statler wants to make a legendary repairman in 2nd edition. That would be pretty epic. It's just like, our thing broke, we don't know how to fix it. Call in the repairman.
Well, I have I no spoilers, but I did an adventure. So I wrote the 4th adventure of Age of Ashes, and there is an NPC who exists somewhere in that adventure who has an ability to be better at crafting than a PC that was close to that level would be, because she has this whole thing where she's like the best smith in this entire area.
So you're saying you created Statler's legendary repairman?
Yes.
As an NPC.
I'm saying that, well, not Statler. Statler can make Statler's own legendary repairman and give that legendary repairman whatever backstory Statler wants to. But, the point is you can make a legendary repair person if you want to.
All right, cool. So I'm going to ask you my next question for my list of questions, which was, how did you get started working at Paizo? A lot of times, my fans, if they ask questions before the show, we're asking, how do I get into the industry? How did some of the people at Paizo get into the industry?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, my involvement with Paizo started, actually through organized play. I started in, it was kind of funny because it was one of those things where the venture captain in Boston at the time, Don Walker, had put out a call on the forums, and he was saying, hey, I'd like to get some Pathfinder Society play started up here. Can I get a few people to come out to this game store and play with me? And here, I was thinking, I was a homegroup player, and I was thinking, well, I don't really know about playing with strangers. Is this going to be fun? Is this going to be entertaining? Am I going to like this? I mean, spoiler alert, I did. But
and this was after you played a lot of Pathfinder Society with a set custom group of 4 people. Yeah,
I've been playing Pathfinder Society because we had a home group that we were in college, and with people coming and going, we were having some trouble establishing an ongoing campaign. So we played Pathfinder Society with a set home group, and then
we also played with our friends from across the country at Gen Con and other big conventions, right? Yeah.
So we had sort of those 2 ways that we did it. But then again, at Gen Con, the focus was very much on, okay, I'm playing with these people I know, and there's a few other people. So I wasn't sure with the groups of people I didn't know as well. But I had a ton of fun with it. I kept coming back. I played week after week. I got really into GMing it. We became veteran lieutenants out there, and I mean before I knew it, I was a 5-star GM. So it was. So I really got into it through my toward Paizo through my connection with Pathfinder Society. I also started getting into writing freelance. I wrote first for the Wayfinder magazine, which was pretty awesome because they accept fan submissions, and they're not looking to see if you have a history of writing anywhere else. You can just send in their stuff. some stuff. And then I started working with other companies. So I was doing a fair amount for Legendary Games, and I did some, which they're really great to work with as well. Let's see, who else did I work with early on?
You did a little bit for Paizo.
Yeah.
Didn't you do
I did Monster
Summoner's
Summoner's Handbook. Yeah, I'm thinking about Monster Summoner's Handbook. I did a spread of magic items for that, or a spread being 2 pages.
Yeah, but guess what else they decided to give Linda for her first freelance project? The monster summoning list of Linda, look through every outsider in the game and see if you could find some that you could add to the monster summoning lists. At appropriate levels. And I remember you handed that back in, and it had all these notes of this is much lower level than most things of this level, but it can cast this really high level spell.
Yeah, I took it very seriously. I was thorough with it. I made sure that it was in on time. I mean, that's one thing when you're getting started with freelance, making sure to have professional communications, to turn things on time or early if you can, and if anything comes up, if you have questions, to ask the person you're working with. But so I had some work with Paizo. I was a 5-star GM, and yes, Summon the Lantern Archon, says Dragon Spirits. They're a fun summon. But yeah, so pew pew pew, exactly. But after that, so when the position came open at Paizo, there were a few developer positions that came open, and they do. For a lot of these creative team positions, they do blind testing, which I think is really great. They'll send out this long test. You take the test. It gets brought into Paizo. Somebody who's not scoring the test strips off your name and just replaces it with the number. And then people will go through and they'll score it. And then so they do sort of the resumes first, just to make sure you're qualified at a baseline level. Then they do that scoring, and then only after that, once they've match the top test back with the names and things like that, then they call people in for interviews and stuff. So that was sort of the process of getting that position. And as soon as I came in for my interview afterwards, they asked, so what do you want to work on while you're here? I'm like, so Pathfinder Society, please. And that was one of the positions they were looking for. So
as I recall, it wasn't that simple. As I recall, they then didn't assign you to Pathfinder Society, but instead to AP Back Matter. But at Pathfinder Society was, as usual, just had so many tasks and was kind of just needed more hands, and John was just saying later and later into the night, so you just started doing more Pathfinder Society things, and eventually they realized that they needed to keep assigning you to Pathfinder Society in an organic way.
Okay, you're right. I did simplify it a bit, but I was certainly eager to help John out, because God knows John is a hard worker, and he's really dedicated to the campaign, and I wanted to make sure that things would be running smoothly there.
Back Matter Giant Slayer. Oh man, Chevy T.S. Rodriguez, you were on the ball. You
Whoa.
know exactly what the first thing that Linda did when she got to the company was. Did you write the forward of that Giant Slayer?
I may have.
But
Chevy,
still.
did I write the forward to that? Because you seem to remember what I've done better than I can. No, it was the Back Matter of Giant Slayer. It had some monsters in it. It had a.
Oh yeah, Sheppy says yes.
Okay, well there you go.
That is the answer.
Yes.
That is how Sheppy knew. But.
Okay, wow, I'm impressed. Props to you.
But yeah, if I remember, you were writing the back matter to that Giant Slayer, and then they sent it to Wes because you were totally new and they didn't know what it was going to be, and he was like, "Wow, this is really good."
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to brag for myself, but you can brag.
But I can brag for you. I think
fair enough.
The Pyropiscus, which was a monster that you did most of the stuff that's in there, has often been listed as one of the top monsters in AP Back Matter, and.
That one was fun.
That one was pretty funny.
Yeah, the whole idea that it's just like, it's a lava death worm. And also
it was the fish, right?
Yeah, it's a fish. It's like a lava fish that when it erupts out of a volcano, and if there isn't lava for it to move around on, it sort of hardens and crystallizes and just waits there for more lava. And if there is, it's just like the jumping lava death piranha that's coming out and attacking you and stuff like that.
That's pretty epic.
But I think one of the monsters I'm most proud of that I've worked on though is probably the Gravedigger, which is a monster that's sort of an undead monster that's sort of based around the idea of being of being buried alive. And so not only does it have this, not only does it have this ability that, so it can kind of create a hole and then create a hole underneath you and then bury you in it, but it also has a poison that does charisma damage, and if you're damaged all the way down, then you fall into a coma, and you wake up a week later. So the idea behind that monster is that people will seem to be dead, and then someone else will bury them alive, even if the undead didn't manage to do the burying alive of them.
That was in Bestiary 5, along with Too Speaky, your other original monster for Bestiary 5.
Yeah, the little ones, they're sort of like little fan-tailed chinchillas that have some air kineticist powers. I wanted to do something cute that flew, and that's.
You know what? I'm not that surprised that someone here on the stream of the Chevy knew about your Giant Slayer back matter, because when I was trying to talk about Unchained being my first book, someone on the stream knew. I believe that I had an author credit in Monster Codex, which was actually for the Goblin Sticky Lord that I wrote during copy fitting. So.
Chevy says that's beyond evil. Yeah. So when I'm GMing, I have a favorite term that I like to use: friendly. If something is friendly, it's not friendly.
So there's a graph I haven't prepared for today's interview of the things that Linda likes, and if it's very, very cute or very, very creepy, then those are the best, but there's this place in the middle where it's not as good.
Yeah,
so
I like
she's
the
also the
queen.
She's the queen of Leshies, and she has the Too Speaky is cute.
Yeah.
And the Gravedigger is super creepy and terrifying. So there is that. Because you were known as the Queen of Leshies as one of your aliases on the board, right?
Well, I mean, that kind of started where I liked Leshies, and then people in the office gave me a hard time for liking Leshies, and John was kind of flinching away from it. And whenever I kind of get a rise out of John, of course, I've got to like lean way into it. So it went from I like Leshies. I'm going to write a few Leshies too. I'm going to try to write pretty much every new Leshie that comes out from here on out, and also I'm going to cover. Well, at the time it was I'm going to cover our office door with printouts in color of every Leshie art we've ever done. And now I just have like this wall of Leshie art in my cube. That's just.
Don't you also have one Leshie art we didn't do?
Yeah, I do. Well, there was
Unchained.
There was a Leshie art from Unchained that was ordered, but that didn't wind up making it into the book. So that's on my wall too. And I also have I've also had a couple of awesome folks draw me Leshie art, and so I have that printed out and I add that to my cube too.
Are you gonna stop until Leshie is a core ancestry along with goblins?
Would I stop even then?
I don't know. So it looks like Dragoon Spirit says also yay kineticist, and I will say. Yay, kineticist! As many of you on this stream probably already know that I designed the kineticist. Alright, so cool. I think that was a pretty inspiring story about getting started in the RPG industry. And it's something that people here, if you're interested in, can just know, get involved, write some stuff for third parties, write some stuff for freelance, and you can get known.
Yeah, and I think this is a fairly small industry, and people talk. So if you impress someone that you're working with, then they're going to recommend you to others. I mean, within Paizo, certainly there'll be questions that come out. It's like, what did you think about working with this person? I'll be like, oh yeah, they did a great job, and they turned their thing in early, and this was awesome. Or like, they fell off the radar, and then I gave them feedback, and they didn't listen, and I'm not so sure about that person. So like, you can really build your reputation based on what you do.
That is good to know. Looks like Chef PTS Rodriguez says, that's amazing. I would love to be a society GM.
Well, you can.
Yeah, how would Sheppy get involved with being a society GM? What if there's not a local lodge nearby to where Sheppy is?
Well, are we assuming that Sheppy has looked for a local lodge? Because it can also talk about how you would.
How would you look first of all to see if there's a local lodge?
Yeah. So on Paizo.com. So if you go to PathfinderSociety.club, that's a URL that'll get you to our landing page for Pathfinder Society, and from there you can click on coordinators, and that'll have a list of all of our volunteer coordinators. So our venture captains and things like that are in the area. Oh, you're from Chile. There's nothing close. So first of all, So you can try, if you can't find any, if there isn't like a community nearby at all. One place that you can look also is we have a bunch of play-by-post and virtual tabletop going online in our forums. So you can check that out as well.
I've heard online is the fastest growing community.
Yeah, online is the fastest growing community. So that could be a good way to get started in connecting with. If you want to just kind of, if you want to try out GMing for Pathfinder Society before then, like going out and being the person who says, "Hey, I'm going to do this." Another thing with Pathfinder Society is like you don't have to have the games open to everyone in the public to be a Pathfinder Society GM. Like, if you just gather a few friends and you want to sit down on the table and play some Pathfinder Society and GM for it, I'd recommend, taking a look at this document we were talking about earlier. The Pathfinder Society Role-Playing Guild Guide lays out sort of everything that's different about playing for Society compared to just playing the Pathfinder RPG by itself. But yeah, definitely check out PathfinderSociety.club, and that should give you links to all related documents that you'll want to check out.
I mean, that's how we started doing a lot more games. We had done it at Gen Con. Like Linda said, we had a home group where I just plotted out the entire year of the Shadow Lodge arc to get them from level 1 through Eyes of the Ten with meeting the maximum number of NPCs. And we went through that entire arc just with that home group at the beginning, and you absolutely can.
Yeah, Chevy,
and
totally.
Pathfinder Society is always looking for people who are interested, and even if you find a local group in Chile that are really interested, you could potentially start a lodge there. I know that, like, in Spain, it started out that there was nobody there, and then they built up to this point that they had these game days that were just tons of tables.
So I'd recommend doing then is, yes, you could, first of all, you can totally play with your home group, grab some friends.
Yep.
And if you play, if there's game stores in your area, those can be a really great place to find people. You can talk to game store owners and see if they're interested in working with you there. They can sign up. Game stores can sign up as registered retailers on Paizo.com and get some benefits from doing that.
I think if they're a registered retailer, that they get, like, the adventures for free, right?
Yeah, they do. And then GMs who are running from that store can take advantage of that.
And even if you don't have a retailer, if you were willing to run local games in your area that were open to more people and become a venture agent, right, then you would also get access to those adventures for free, so you could run.
Yes, completely.
And Statler points out that is a good time to start in 2nd edition since everyone will be starting fresh and there aren't going to be 10 years worth of things to be aware of. And that's definitely a good point. So here's another question for Dragoon Spirit. Dragoon Spirit has a lot of ones that are interesting to think about. It says, here's another question. I saw in Kingmaker that a D&D 5e bestiary was noted as a possibility. Is there any possibility for society scenarios to be adopted to non-Pathfinder rule sets?
I mean, I would say that's something that fans can certainly do if they want to for their own home groups and things like that, but that's not something that we are looking into at this time to do as an official part of the program.
And Dragon Spirit is asking, what's the point of a 5e bestiary from Kingmaker? Well, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to do it. I'd just be excited to have all of the, like, Kingmaker was your second adventure pack?
Yeah, it was.
It was one of a big one for our group. We played it for so long. Linda spent literally hundreds of hours on her spreadsheet for Kingmaker.
Yeah, I can't give John a hard time
with
for
expanded kingdom rules. Like, it was... And some of those people, after the 10th anniversary, will have moved on to other game systems. And being able to make the 10th anniversary be about everyone who played it before would be cool. Plus... I mean, if 5e people want to play it in 5e, but also get to see what kind of cool adventures Paizo and Pathfinder are putting out there and get excited and learn about a new company and a new brand, I'm going to be happy with that, right? I mean, there's a lot of 5e players out there, and also not everyone has an identity of 5e player or
there's plenty of people
Pathfinder 2nd edition player. We're just all gamers. So there's plenty of people out there who are going to play all sorts of games, and maybe this group that they're running for wants to run it in 5e, but the same GM is also running it in 2nd with another group and 1st with another group. So really, just whatever game you want to play, Paizo's a company, like, all the way up, except maybe some of the side branches that aren't in editorial, is gamers all the way up to the CEO.
Yeah.
And it's all about gaming and having fun and doing cool stuff. So, Statler suggests that someone who is looking to start up Pathfinder study could just run one of the Weeby Goblins Free RPG Day one-shots for free to get credit and a free feel for the reporting system. I would like to up the ante on that and say that you could run a quest, also free, and they're shorter. They're only an hour long. And many of them have cool quest packs that are like a little series of stories that all add up together into a new whole. And maybe I'm biased because it's one of the few scenarios where I pitched the idea that eventually became the scenario, but the new quest pack, What the Helm Hides, about the Decemvirate, is just really cool Pathfinder Society lore.
Well, I thought that was when Mark pitched that too. I mean, it turned out great, but I thought that was a really excellent idea because when you think about the Decemvirate, you know, the 10, the leaders of the Pathfinder Society. Well, leaders in a sense. I mean, not going to get into all that.
They're the leaders.
They're the leaders, but you know, they're kind of got their own shadowy thing going on. But particularly with their presence in some past adventures, they tend to be something that shows up more high level. So the idea that you can be like, you know what, you can engage with the Decemvirate, and we can engage with the Decemvirate first level. Sure, why not?
Yep, it seems like a high level thing, but actually, it's gonna be a first level quest.
Mm-hmm. And the very idea that someone being low level and therefore not as well known can prove a serious advantage was an interesting thing to be able to play around with there.
Pretty cool. Statler says, I've always been impressed with Paizo coming out with different and new products, usually ahead of the curve. Well, it's a company full of really creative people, and honestly, we would probably try to do like sort of crazier and even more different and weird products all the time. You have to have other people bring us down to earth with the realities of the schedule and what we need to put out.
The schedule.
Yep.
The schedule in which there are always too many things to finish in the allotted time, and yet there's always so many ideas that folks have.
So Statler and Dragoon Spirit both asked a question about quests. They seem like they're very interested in quests and want to know if more 1 hour quests will come out with TUI as part of the regular schedule.
Yeah, so we're definitely looking to expand the model of quests and to offer them a lot more frequently rather than offering them as those set packs. We're looking to offer them as individual quests that are released alongside the scenarios in a given month.
So, as I understand it, the reason for the new XP model is so that you can have a standalone quest and have it still give XP?
Yeah, because the thing with quests is that we sort of had two models of quests prior to what we're looking at here for second edition. We had the model of the standalone no XP quest, which, you know, that's not really great where you play an adventure and you don't get any XP for it. And then we also had the quest packs, which, if you played the whole pack, that worked great. But if you didn't, you were kind of left with this weird, well, you get 1 XP if you complete this number of them, and 2 XP if you you get 1 prestige point if you complete this percentage of them, or whatever. So you had like these scaling charts that had to determine like how much reward you would get for each one that you played, and it was just kind of awkward because then if you did something else probably through the middle, you couldn't really come back and finish it. So especially when considering the function of quests as the power of quests as 1 hour adventures to serve as demos at conventions and short experiences for people who may not necessarily have the time and you're not going to come back with the same group every time. It really felt like a lot of the potential of the quest format was wasted by kind of shackling it to it needs to always be packs of 4 or 5 that are contained.
Well,
and that doesn't mean that we can't have, you know, connected stories that would appear in quests in the future, but it does mean that we're not looking at that as being our default model.
Well, definitely one of my favorite quests was the one where you have to do a martial arts fight and you don't kill them right away because you have to show off the right martial arts moves, and that one definitely could have been one that if it was separate, it would be even easier to just be like, hey, do you like martial arts dojo battles?
Yeah.
Just do this. Even though it was part of actually a really cool story as well. So yeah, quests are definitely neat. And I heard that one of the good things about quests was that a lot of game stores don't always have hours such that you can get off of work, go there, and play a whole scenario. So for a whole venue, quests might be really their only hope.
Yeah, and the thing is too, if you're trying to split a scenario, I mean, we've been to we've been to conventions before where we're trying to organize and the slots are 2 hours and it's like, what do you even do? Do we split a scenario down the middle and hope everyone comes back and give them half tickets? And no.
And don't rush a scenario. Much as John loves spreadsheets, rushing a scenario is maybe his least favorite thing.
That's true.
Although I'd like to joke that 2 of the people in the Pathfinder Society community with a reputation for running over the longest are actually Linda and John.
That's true.
And they became the Pathfinder Society developers.
Guilty as charged. If I'm running in a convention slot, I will spend the time that I am allotted. If I'm not running in a convention slot, I can take a while. Although I didn't ever take 16 hours to run a Pathfinder Society scenario.
That's true. I only took 16 hours to run that because it was our home group, and they just refused to listen to me.
Oh my god.
Because we were running an adventure, there's a murder mystery, and the plot eventually just, the killer stupidly confronts the PCs, even if the PCs have not been making any progress. So they hadn't been making progress, so I kept trying to fast forward to that part.
What was that phrase that guy said? It was like...
What was the thing that...
It was, has it been 12 hours in real life or something like that?
Yes. So that was Alex and Peter, not this Alex, but a different Alex.
No, a different
who said that... I said, no, okay, so 12 hours later, like, hold on, it hasn't actually been 12 hours yet since we started doing this. I was like, okay, the NPCs refuse to talk to you anymore. You've talked to them like a million times. Like, all right, we're going to pull them over one at a time and intimidate them and be like, I know you did it.
And I was like, oh my god, my character gives you so much side-eye and she goes back to sit in her room until you stop.
This is the longest Pathfinder Society scenario maybe ever happened. It was hilarious, though. I mean, it had some very enjoyable moments. Mm-hmm. I think that the highlight moment was there was this, like, sketchy 7 wisdom and 7 charisma, and he role-played it. He was not just doing it for the stat points, Inquisitor. And he just kept doing suspicious-looking things. And he was in Taldor, and their faction mission was to find, like, this book that the cook had of, like, poison recipes. And so he kept annoying the cook. He kept create water over and over again in the kitchen, and it was like a chaotic, evil cook who was just like, get out of here, I'll kill you. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, what happened was, at night, when everyone was resting, he was like, I'm going to go up and skulk around in the ship.
He being the PC.
He being the Inquisitor. Mm-hmm. So he was just always skulking around. And so when the murder happened, he was like right there. Mm-hmm. And he got there, and people out of character were saying this. The NPC is such an asshole. He's probably faking it. So as the captain came in, he's like, murder, murder, and the PCs come in afterwards. The Inquisitor casts create water over the crime scene, and the captain says, to the PCs, well, your guy was here before anyone else. But I'm sure he didn't do it, right? He was with you the whole time, right? And they were like, no, we have no idea.
He just vanished from
the cabin. We have no idea where he was.
We don't know what he was up to.
We were taking watch, and he suddenly slipped out of the cabin. And the captain said, okay, but why did you just create water? You destroyed all of the evidence. And he said, I needed to make sure he was dead. So, right away, they tied him up to the mast and declared him to be the actual person who...
I mean, because all the PCs suspected him, too,
The PCs in character all thought it was him. Like, he was super sketch.
And we're talking about this, and the player just thought this was hilarious, the idea.
The best part was that his fellow 2 Taldor faction members decided that this was their opportunity to get that hook away from her book. So one of them went downstairs and said, remember that guy you hate who kept creating water? He's tied up on the mast. I bet you could do whatever you want. She's like, I'm going to coup de grace him with my war axe. Thanks so much. And she ran off while the first level playing up into a much higher sub-tier Taldor guy sneaked down and just was going to grab the book. Now, they did this all on the side without letting anyone else know, because this was early seasons. And what happened next was the best. The Cheliax faction player desperately tried to save the life of the guy tied to the mast when he was about to be coup de grace. He was a monk with he was skill focused all the way in bluff. So he said, I need to come up with something that will get her to not kill him. The only thing I know is she's obsessed with guarding her book, that she's always down there. So she's like, he's like, wait, don't kill him. This is a fake out. Someone's downstairs stealing your stuff. You better go check. And then he was like, hey guys, we're going to untie him while she goes downstairs. And she went downstairs.
So he rolls high on his bluff check.
Yeah, he rolled high on his bluff check. She's like, oh, thank you so much. And she goes downstairs, and there is a guy stealing from her who's first level, who she crits and takes 1 hit point from dead. It was an adventure.
Yep.
And the guy playing the Oracle of Desna would just wander out from the room, out into the starlight outside, and he would just come back like 45 minutes later with like one of the things you would find out in Clue, where it was like, it couldn't have been this person in this room at that time.
Yep.
And he was always right, but it was always like barely narrowing down the crime. In any case, that was long, but that was abnormal.
Yes. But I did have to mention that time.
You did have to mention, but you usually ran pretty long.
Yeah.
But that's because you like to add so many details.
I mean, I
to the
really like
adventure.
adding the details. I really like doing the research on the adventure beforehand, seeing what else I can dig up, what other little details I can throw in. I like getting into the role play, making sure that characters have a chance to introduce themselves to each other and to really engage with what's going on. And making sure that, like, of course, all players know each other's names first. It's funny because I ask people to introduce themselves at the beginning of slots, and at first I would just ask people to introduce themselves, but a lot of people would start with their character's name before their actual name, so I'd now have to start with. It's like, okay, let's go real names first. What's your name? And then go through the character names. Overprep GMing says Chevy, my favorite. Guilty as charged.
Linda's the overprepper, and I'm the spontaneous, chaotic guy. And together, we do stuff.
Yep.
It works out pretty well, though.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you have, if that's your signature for GMing style, would you say you have a signature for adventures as an author, developer of sort of something that's like, that's a kind of thing that Linda will do, or are you just very versatile and everything's a little bit different?
I would say that one of the things that I always like to make sure is that there's different ways to approach situations. Like sometimes when I'm working on scenarios, I feel like I'm saying the word if too much. Like it's if this, then this, if this, then this, and I'm like trying to come up with other ways to phrase it because I'm always trying to think, all right, what if the PCs approach this from a sneaky angle? What if PCs approach this from a combat angle? What if they try to talk their way through this and things like that? And what are the other options? Like one of the first scenarios I ever worked on was From Under Ice in season 6. I was going to
bring it up if you didn't.
And I ended up with a flowchart that was like multiple sheets of paper taped together of what happens in this case and what happens in this case. Because like I wasn't as practiced at that time of holding all that in my head, so I had to draw it all out. But yeah, I remember that from early on.
Yeah, I would say in the same vein that a signature of and you can check your scenario and look in the developer and see if it's Linda or Mike or John. And another Linda signature is that if the venture captain at the beginning has really important information in the questions, and then it says at the end, if the pieces didn't ask the question, the venture captain still tells you this crucial information. That's like a little flourish that I've noticed that you put into all of your adventures.
I tend to have that in mind, especially more recently. And I've also been looking for. I've also been trying to look at more ways to create the challenges that support a lot more different skills and things like that. And I've also been the one to work on a lot of those. The ones like Beyond the Half-Life Path that are those super flexible,
super replayable.
The super replayables, yeah.
What was the other one? The really really popular one.
Tome of Righteous Repose.
Yeah, Tome of Righteous Repose.
So I worked on both of those, and so those are interesting to work on. I mean, one of the things with those, and the reason why we don't really do more of those is that having now done them and interactive specials, they are harder and more time-consuming than interactive specials.
Wow.
Like, holding that many pieces in your mind at once and trying to balance everything, it's just...
Does your flowcharting skill come in handy with doing those?
Yes, but you're going to need a bigger flowchart. It's like, okay, what does this go? I mean, so like I majored in math in college, so I mean, I have a very sort of analytical approach toward things. But even then, like for some of these things, I'm looking at it, it's just like, oh god, I have a headache from trying to work out this scenario.
She's got the theoretical approach. I've got the engineering approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. And definitely those replayables are a lot of fun, but they do seem like they are just full of possible little pieces that you need to connect.
Well, basically, you're doing 3 scenarios simultaneously, plus you need to have other connective text. And you need to balance everything, and like checking for errors in those is just like you're not even gonna get close to finding all of them, right? Like, because we obviously can't find all of the errors and things. We have the development pass, we have an editor that goes over it. And then we have another that goes over it for the primary edit, and then we have another editor who goes over it once it's all laid out and things like that. Pathfinder Society, Starfinder Society scenarios, Pathfinder Adventure Card Society scenarios, they don't get as many edits as the print books. So we really have to be careful about catching as much as we can.
That makes sense. And even the print books, like, it's impossible. A lot of people think, oh, why didn't they catch this one thing? It's impossible to catch everything that is in a book. It just is. There's so many things, and the editors do such an amazing job.
Oh yeah, no, they do. I mean, it's
like, occasionally, do you use a swim check to break open a door during a chase? Yes, but those are so isolated of incidents, and it just something is gonna slip through.
For everything we don't catch, there's another 50 things we did catch, right? So.
So you were saying that innovative ways of using skills is also one of your hallmarks and adventures. Does that relate to some of the design work that you've done with some of the subsystems in Ultimate Intrigue and some of the other books?
Yeah, so the Influence subsystem is very much a collaboration between me and Thurston Hellman, Thirsty, because he had done sort of the first iteration of that in a scenario, and then I did the sort of the rules for Ultimate Intrigue, and then after that we came full circle because he was doing the scenario Bid for Alabastream, which I was developing, but he had also used the Influence system as it had gone through my Ultimate Intrigue thing. So it was
Thirsty, then hit the ball to you, then you hit it to him, and then he hit it back to me.
Yeah, totally, for the Influence system. But
was that was the one where one of our listeners here short-circuited the whole adventure and removed one of the people he was supposed to influence by summoning like a diva or something.
Yeah, and I was like,
and I think I had to call you up in your room at PaizoCon and Thirsty.
I was in my pajamas in bed, and I got this call that was like somebody did something terrible to your scenario, and I'm just like, oh my god, okay, clothes back on, back down to the room.
So I contacted Thirsty and Linda because I was just wandering the hall, and I saw that this had happened. And we got it resolved.
Yeah. Chevy asked, for what season have you written? I've only played pre-season 4 scenarios.
You've not played any of Linda's.
So the first one that I worked on was number 616, The Golden Guardian. And I did roughly half of
David protests it was not that terrible.
I wasn't going to name you unless you named you.
I named him already. You just weren't paying attention.
Okay, well, you're right. You said one of our listeners, didn't you? I thought you said one of our listeners.
I missaid David.
Okay, well, regardless.
Could have been the other David.
It could have been another David. Anyway.
There's also Dave Nelson.
That is true. So I started with season 6, and I did about half of the scenarios from season 6 through 9, and then when Michael Sayer came on board, he joined the team, and then we sort of rejiggered how we were doing things, because Blake is lightning fast with his stuff, so you'll see his name popping up a lot more after he joined.
Yep. So if you have played preseason 4, that was when we were all playing.
Yeah.
We were fans just like you during that time.
So I've played a lot more of the scenarios from before 616 because it's kind of the thing we always joke about that happens at Paizo, that once you start working at Paizo, you play a lot less Pathfinder than you did before because you just don't have as much time. Well, because a lot of us, in addition to our day jobs at Paizo, we're taking a lot of freelance writing projects as well for both Paizo and for third-party companies as well. Some people for other game systems, things like that. So.
But you're still able to play occasionally in a 2nd edition War for the Crown game on the weekends, right?
Why? Yes, 2nd edition War for the Crown GM, who is sardonically smirking at me. Yeah. So I do get to play. I don't play as much Pathfinder Society anymore, but as I used to be able to. I mean, I guess of course not because I used to play twice a week. But like so I'm in Mark's second edition War for the Crown game. We've been applying all the rules changes as they go. So starting with the playtest, it went through from 1.6 to all these other variations in between. So I've really had a chance to feel the evolution of the game and all the ways that the feedback that people have given has really led to an awesome experience. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know if our home group is gonna go back to first edition Pathfinder after this. I mean, the second edition works a lot better for us. We have a group that I think Mark's mentioned in some past ones how our group tends to get really focused on like the preparations of the buffs and like how are we going to do this and how are we going to do that. Whereas with second edition, it feels a lot more like we have more choices. And I mean, I'm playing. I don't usually play fighters in first edition because I do like to have. I do feel that they don't necessarily have as many options as I would like. So I tend to gravitate more toward the characters who have a bajillion things they can do, like battle oracles and things like that. But I'm playing a fighter now in second edition that sort of switches between a one-handed axe fighter with a shield and two-handed axe fighting, and then she's got these other things that she trades out, so she's really versatile, and I like that. So I've been having fun with it.
And yes, Dragoon Spirit, this is the game I noted in a previous stream that they can sneak around really well with the skill feat that the rogue has to help quiet allies so they can sneak around.
Yeah, that's been super useful. And then the rogue doesn't show up for one session, and we're like, we have to sneak, but we don't have quiet allies. What do? And we spent like 15 minutes.
The wizard player was like, you didn't explain to me how good quiet allies was in the final version, or I would have taken it just in case the rogue's player didn't show up, so my wizard could quiet the allies.
So then when she shows up later, we're like, yeah, everyone missed you a lot.
It was too late for sneaking, but just in time to stab something.
Yep.
So it looks like Sheppy's wondering, is it significantly faster than Pathfinder First Edition? The final battle for Wrath of the Righteous lasted more than 6 hours. For our group, drastically. When I ran Rise of the Rune Lords, the preparing and casting buff spells before entering the final battle of Rise of the Rune Lords lasted more than 2 hours.
Why? I mean, I know why. We were like, well, the Mystic Thurge versus the Eldritch Knight. Who needs the highest caster level bark skins versus who can settle for the second highest caster level bark skins? And Shields of Faith. And can we get the NPCs to cast them? And what should we use our Greater Rod of Extend on? And just like on and on and on. Oh my god. Like, I do not miss that at all when playing second edition. I have to say, I do not miss that at all.
It's way faster. It's way smoother because just sort of the way certain things work. And for me as the GM, prep is way easier because my group is they're great optimizers, then they're very tactically teamwork oriented. They always work together instead of like trying to have each player selfishly do what they can on their own, which means they accomplish a lot. And in first edition, they would do that, and then I would spend so long adjusting the AP to sort of be a good fit for them that it takes more time for me to convert first edition to playable for my home group in first edition than to convert first edition to second edition. So it's definitely a time saver on that. Dragoon Spirit wonders, is that kind of helping out of skill usage likely to give more space to use those options in PFS due to party composition unknowns? Definitely. So Jason has already talked about the fact that there's a way to sort of follow the expert where somebody could be like, hey, let me show you what's going on. And with that helps you boost up the people who are worse. The reason why the Quiet Allies was so useful for my group is because it meant that they only had to roll once. At the lowest bonus, but you don't understand until you've actually worked out the math just how good rolling once at the lowest bonus is compared to having everyone roll, even the people at the higher bonus. Because somebody's going to roll badly when it comes to stealth.
And it's interesting too on the other side of that, I guess, is another thing that I've worked on for adventures is trying to calibrate the DCs better for the times when everyone gets to try. So you'll see that in some of the more modern group chases where the DCs look really high, but it's like, no, you know what? If this many people are rolling, what you're really looking at is, instead of saying, okay, what's 10 plus the lowest bonus in the group, you're saying take like 17 or 18 plus the lowest bonus in the group to consider what you might be getting.
Because that's just sort of a thing when everyone gets to roll and you ignore the low rolls and take the best one.
Yeah.
So Dragon Spirit's wondering if teamwork feats could possibly return, or is there any reason they couldn't? There's no reason they couldn't. One thing about teamwork feats that gives me some pause is that they were enormously, incredibly, majorly powerful feats that people all thought they didn't like, because a lot of people like to build their character in isolation or not worry about, like, I have to get someone else to take it and we have to do this teamwork thing. So anytime we could create a feat that's actually really balanced, but everyone's like, this is awesome, I want this feat so much, that's good. Whereas anytime we create a feat that is actually extraordinarily more powerful than other feats, and people are like, this isn't very good, that gives me pause. I know that back before he worked at the company, Mike, the newest org play GM, on the forums, he was always like, I wonder why people don't like teamwork feats that much. That was one of his things, and he would show off things you could do with teamwork feats. And like, guys, these teamwork feats are really good.
Yeah.
And they are really good, so I would say nothing is
Look
stopping...
out for days.
Oh, yes. Nothing is stopping us from making them, but we have to maybe rethink how they work and what their branding is, to try to make something that can be maybe not as powerful or more liked. And maybe an option for that is something where only one person takes it and it applies to everyone, so that people don't feel, oh, I need to get another person to take it, but then it doesn't do as much. Yeah. And we certainly do have some feats in Pathfinder 2nd Edition that are like that, where only one person takes it and it helps the whole group. So that could be a start on teamwork feats, at least. And it looks like David Nielsen says he enjoys teamwork feats, and the Iridian Fold ones are really nice. I don't really remember the Iridian Fold ones, but there are so many good teamwork feats. There are a few that are just head scratchers, but most of them that I've seen are just really, really good.
I remember that there was cool art on that spread, and that the feats were fun from the additional resources review, but I don't actually remember what they do. This is something that happens sometimes, because I read literally every rule pretty much. We started dividing things out so, like, not everyone on the team has to read everything for additional resources, but I just have sort of these blurry memories of, oh yeah, there was something cool over there, I can check that out sometime.
I mean, in our group, the guy who played that Inquisitor from the story, he and another one of our friends created PFS characters called the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina. And they are, every level that they've taken is in a different class, but basically their build is that they are the worst possible karmic sorcerers in the game, with as many debuffs on their charisma bit checks as possible, so that they fail to cast defensively on a cantrip. With they only have one level to lower their chance of casting defensively, and the Karmic Sorcerer Bloodline Arcana is that when you fail to cast defensively, it provokes an attack of opportunity from you, and they have like a million teamwork feats that are tied into that, so that one of them will fail to cast defensively. I think they have a spell that's a move action that they can use, that they can fail. So they try to fail to cast defensively multiple times. And they have like
Clear Ear that gave them a bonus on perception but a penalty on charisma.
Yes, Clear Ear makes you angry but gives you perception. And there's one adventure where they got your food is dosed with drugs that give you a penalty, a charisma damage, which they determined would not prevent them from casting their spells. Well, they had the minimum charisma to cast their spells, of course. 11, so they could cast first level spells, which they only cast because the DC to cast it defensively is too higher, and therefore it's easier to fail to cast it defensively.
So then they deliberately got themselves super high, and I was playing a cleric of Sukiya who was trying to interpret the wisdom in their ramblings.
They were just saying like stoner stuff.
Yeah.
And one of them had come late to the session. I was like, you went through a mosquito swamp, and so he was just having flashbacks to the mosquito swamp and just said some really stoned stuff. And Linda was like, we will be attacked by a swarm. Lord Sukiya says, draw your alchemist fire. It was just in the middle of, like, a farmyard.
Yeah.
And then, like, 5 minutes later, they were attacked by a swarm. And she was like, see? And everyone had their alchemist fire out because they wanted to listen to the cleric. So, sure. But the point is that they used teamwork feats so that they got, like, a bundle of different attacks at a massive bonus every time they failed to cast defensively.
Yep. That's one of the weirdest builds I've ever seen. The build that's based around the concept that you're trying to fail as much as possible.
Yeah. And
they were pretty darn effective, though.
Lookout is definitely good for acting on the surprise round. If you have a diviner, it is crazy good.
Yeah.
And we definitely had a lookout chaining with a diviner going on in your Kingmaker game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely did. Alright. So, let's see. We have had a really surprisingly active and good audience for this so far. I think I'll ask you one more question. What is your favorite character that you've played? Because people usually don't get a chance to talk about their character and have a platform for it. But since you work at Paizo,
you asked me a favorite question.
People actually want to hear about your character.
Favorite questions are so hard. Okay, well, actually, it is probably the if you're talking about Pathfinder Society, I'm just gonna talk Pathfinder Society.
I don't know. What's your favorite character of all?
That's too hard.
Okay. What's your favorite non-Pathfinder Society?
What's my favorite non-Pathfinder Society character?
Because I already know your favorite is Pathfinder Society character is Nyla.
Yeah, my Battle Oracle is my Battle Oracle with a No Soy Familiar is my favorite Pathfinder Society character. She's pretty awesome, and she's who I played through Eyes of the Ten with. But if you're asking about non-Pathfinder Society, would be Bryn, the character that you may have heard about in
Tuesday's
episode in Jade Regent. She was just really fun to play because it was fun to play the alien perspective that she had on the world when it comes to having sort of this psychopomp-touched way of thinking about things. So she wasn't really afraid of death. She didn't conceptualize it in the same way. But that also gave her there were some interesting dynamics with how she interacted with people and her journey towards sort of like learning more, like that you probably shouldn't just giggle when someone dies, like you should probably not do that and things like that. And
when people turn to you, say your catchphrase, it's funny because he's dead.
It's funny because he's dead. It's just like, why? Yeah, that was a fun character to play.
Didn't you draw fan art of Bryn baking cherry pies for your No Soy Familiar of Nyla? So
yeah, I did.
In a way, they're both tied together.
That's true. I drew some chibis of them. Again, cute and creepy. That's why No Soys are my avatar on Paizo.com, because they sort of, it's like, oh, they're like scribes of death, but you can also bribe them with shinies and cherry pie, and I find that just so appealing.
Oh my gosh, you answered a question that I'm now going to ask everybody, because that's a great question, which is, what is your avatar on Paizo.com, and why did you pick that avatar?
Yeah.
And I'll answer myself here. I picked the Unfettered Eidolon because Rogue Eidolon was my handle on Paizo.com before Eidolons were in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked the Unfettered Eidolon because that's like being a Rogue Eidolon.
Yeah.
And David Nielsen says that your Axpeak Riding Paladin was pretty cool.
Yeah, she was she was really fun to play. There was a 2-weapon fighting Axpeak Riding Paladin and
Kato
Yame, yeah. And I always think that Axpeaks, they kind of remind me of chocobos. So I decided that my Axpeak would say "work" all the time.
What was the name of your Axpeak that came from Shizuru again?
Crap. Hansuke,
that's right.
Yeah, that was a fun character to play. Just 2-weapon fighting, running around on a thing. She was one of those paladins who wasn't necessarily the smartest or wisest, which I find is the most enjoyable for me when playing the paladins in society play, because that way it's very easy for you to just happen not to notice if the rest of the party is doing stuff. It's just like, yep, you know what? I don't have a sense motive bonus, so out of character, just like walk around a corner, and if you're gonna say the real sketchy stuff, and she won't check. You're good.
Yep. And then you wrote that Paladin's Code of Shizuru, which was like the only one online for a while until the book eventually came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Linda, you have a lot of really cool characters. And we're not saying anything is bad about Kato, but Nyla has always been your favorite. Is that because of the variety of things she can do?
I think that but it's both the variety. The variety of things is one of them. Having a No Soy Familiar is part of it too, but just I think the variety, because as a battle oracle, being able to run into battle. I gave her a ton of spells that were the like healing and recovering from condition spells. So she's like, oh, I've got remove curse, remove paralysis, remove yada yada yada. So it's like, okay, I'm going to run into battle and I'm going to fight. I'll heal you if you need to be healed. I'll remove your conditions if you need the conditions removed. And so I could play her differently from time to time. And I like familiars is just sort of that way that you can add another role playing element to the game. And her backstory was fun too, but I'm not gonna get into all that there. But I gave her some connections to the original leader of the Osirian faction, Amenophis. So that was fun to do as well.
All right. Well,
David says as long as you are not throwing babies at people.
Yep. Can't throw babies.
In response to Dragon Spirit's lawful good is more of a guideline.
Yeah.
That sounds like something a chaotic person would say.
Oh, Dragon Spirit wants to know which champion is going to be your first 2nd edition champion.
Have you've talked about which ones there are?
I mean, people have seen in update 1.6 that we have the Liberator and the Redeemer as well as the Paladin.
Okay, awesome.
And I've even said our War for the Crown group has a Redeemer of Felena as one of the
Yes,
characters.
you have. That's right. It is hard to keep track of exactly what's been announced. But yeah, I was probably going to play Redeemer first. I had a real soft spot for Shelyn as a deity. If the Galarian gods are real, I would worship Shelyn. So, I think that I would probably be likely to play a Shelyn character.
All right. So I think that is probably what I would have expected as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It might be like you know me well or something.
I don't know. I mean, I've had to ask all these interview questions to find out more about you. Okay.
You knew all this already.
Dragoon Spirit says, Mark, I think he's asking which champion I would play first. That's an interesting question, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty excited about all 3 of the champions. So part of me is Redeemer because Shelyn is also my favorite Core 20 deity. So we've got Team Shelyn here. Woot woot Shelyn, says Jem W. No. But kind of a part of me wants to play a Liberator because of a weird reason, which is that of the 3 brands in 1.6, Liberator is one that the internet community has just very consistently, drastically underestimated how good it is, and sort of written it off. And I think I know the reason why, which is it has an ability to break it out of a grapple when you get hit. You take less damage, you break out of grapple, and you move away. And people are thinking, how often will I get grappled? The thing about it is, just taking less damage and moving away is so powerful, because if the enemy had to move up, they can't hit you again. And if they didn't have to move up, you're still wasting tons of their actions in that case. So, David says you will get grappled enough. I don't care if you never get grappled. I think the Liberator is still very powerful. But one thing I learned as a designer, and then learned even more in the playtest, is something that I sort of already know as a consumer. Which is, if you publish a magazine that, let's say it was a magazine that was in 2nd edition Pathfinder, and it also had 5th edition stuff, and you charged a price that was so low that it was a great deal for 2nd edition stuff, people who don't play 5th edition might say, oh, I don't want this magazine, it has 5th edition stuff. Similarly, some people don't want this Liberator because it has a grapple breaking ability that they don't think they're going to need that often. Even though if we had just not even given the grapple breaking and just said, hey, all this does is reduce damage and moves you away from the enemy, they might have wanted that on its own. Because, I mean, conceptually, a lot of people don't have a chassis of a class in their head and thinking, this is the ideal class. They just see what is offered, and if there's something offered they don't want, they assume this is value I have lost compared to if it didn't give a grapple break, it would instead do 90 fire damage. And
that's not a fair trade.
The answer is that sometimes something that the class received is exactly for free. And to be fair, and I like going back to my earlier episodes, to go back to my archetype episode, one of the problems with some archetype design is the idea that, oh, everything in here is supposed to be 90 fire damage worth of value, so I'm going to remove Resist Nature's Lore from the Druid and give them 90 fire damage. And just some things are in there that are sort of for free.
David Nielsen says, maybe if you take the fire damage too. But you know
the champion's going to be immune to fire.
You know they're going to find a way to be immune to fire.
Or heal from fire damage.
Or, reflect the fire damage they take.
Dragon Spirit says too many Shelonites need more Callistrians. Well, I guess we're not really elves. Like, Linda has once been described as being the gnome that was in the playtest blog about gnomes. Someone was like, that might be Linda.
Yeah, and then someone
And
else was like,
gnomes
I don't think she is. She's not made of knives enough. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because, like,
And
it's kind of
gnomes are known as having Shalin as one of their top few deities that they worship. So, because of the colors and the Shalin. So, if Linda was an elf, then maybe she'd worship an elven deity. But since she's clearly that gnome from the preview blog, I guess.
Clearly, yes.
Then she has to worship a
John
deity.
showed it to me and it's just like, yep.
Yep. Maybe. Maybe. John is like the gnome custodian.
Yeah. See, I like to joke around the office about being made of knives, but I'm really friendly, you know. I don't want to hurt anybody.
But when Wes left the company, he left a note saying that you were made of knives.
Yeah, I know, but that's just...
It was on the blog. Everyone can see it.
I know!
He also said that I have radioactive Hulk superpowers.
Yeah, he said that. That's true. I mean, I also gave him a plush Tonberry and took a series of videos of it getting closer and closer to his... getting closer and closer to his desk and stuff like that at one point.
Dragoon Spirit asks if the Golan racial pantheons make the 2E transition. Well, unless something happened to a deity, they probably still exist. Whether or not they're going to be more prominent, less prominent, change their alignment drastically, that anything could happen, but it has to happen in the story.
Yeah.
And so, anything that's going to happen to one of those deities, you'll see it on screen rather than just be like, oh, they all died.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
I mean, that has happened sometimes in other franchises, but that's not something that we're really very interested in, because we're fans in addition to working at the company, and that just doesn't seem like something we would like as fans.
Yeah, it's very much, you'll see timelines moving forward in the sense that there are things that we have not yet like with the Venture Pass and things like that we wouldn't have necessarily moved them forward before, but we're going to say, okay, here's what happened here, here's what happened there. But you're not going to see, like, and then suddenly this giant thing happened. Who killed Eridan?
Yes. So
not going to answer that question.
We have a bog standard response to that, which is, we don't answer that question because the answer that you've come up with is better than anything could possibly be when you find out what the right answer is, because your answer is optimized for you. That is our standard response, and that was what Paizo always said when I was a fan and we asked, and that is what I'm going to say now, even with my additional information that maybe makes it even more true than ever, which is your answer is cooler because it's yours. And so sometimes you have to create fundamental secrets and mysteries and leave it open for the GM. And as a rule of thumb that I have, and also some people in the company have, if you do answer a mystery, which you maybe shouldn't do on the core mystery, but for a side mystery or secret, try to introduce a few more for each one that you answer, so that you create more and more cool plot and story hooks that people can tie in.
And then that's fun too, because if you're planning an adventure, you're looking for story hooks, you go back through and you can see, oh, well, that's interesting, I'm going to pick that up. And we do that all the time, too, looking through old things and picking up story hooks, and then we'll go back and talk to, like, whoever worked on that book and ask around and say, like, does anyone pick this up? Is anybody planning on doing something with this? And the vast majority of the time, it was like, nope, I just dropped them in there because I thought it would be cool to do something with. Hey, you're doing something with that now? Oh, that's fun. And then you just roll forward from there. Mystery Hydra.
Mystery Hydra. Yes, it is like that. For each head, more heads appear.
I like that
Hydra.
analogy.
Yes. That's totally true, and having done some design work on, like, the new Lost Omens World Guide, like, the timeline moved just in time with real life and the Adventure Pass, and some secrets and mysteries had to be resolved, but a lot of new ones have opened up, and just more fertile ground for people to play and experience and find their own stories in the Mystery Hydra. Alright, cool. So, I think that, thanks for staying with us, and in fact, more people join in later on for our extra length session. I think I'm going to say bye to YouTube, and then keep you guys here for a few more minutes while we talk about Saturday's episode. So, bye YouTube!
Bye YouTube! Thanks for tuning in!
Alright.